What if I told you there was a mystery band so Beatle-ish people thought it was a secret Beatles reunion, a Cleveland group whose one big single quietly rewired 80s and 90s power pop, and a Memphis band every critic worships but most casual fans have never even heard of?
It's just friends, but I'm wondering whether
By the late 70s, rock radio was split in three directions. Punk was getting faster, disco was getting glossier, and right in the middle, you had a handful of bands still obsessed with perfect 3-minute pop songs. The Rubinoos were one of those bands. They came out of Berkeley, California in the early 70s, a power pop group in a scene that was still hungover from the hippie era. While everyone else was stretching songs out into jams, the Rubinoos were going the other way. Tight harmonies, big choruses, and a very teenage sense of fun. Their cover of I Think We're Alone Now even scraped the U.S. charts in 1977, peaking at number 45, but it didn't make them household names. I Want to Be Your Boyfriend shows exactly why they've become a cult obsession. It's the key single from their second album, Back to the Drawing Board. Or released in 1979, a short, fizzy blast of power pop that sounds like the Raspberries, filtered through a candy store. The hook is instant, a simple, direct confession of a crush over ringing guitars and hand clap energy. It feels like a perfect high school movie scene. That never actually existed. Here's the ironic twist. The song is probably more famous today because of a lawsuit than because of radio play. In the 2000s, the writers of I Want to Be Your Boyfriend sued Avril Lavigne, arguing that her hit Girlfriend borrowed heavily from their song's hook and structure. The case was settled and both sides moved on, but the whole saga suddenly pushed a niche 1979 single back into headlines. If you only know 5.7.0 Pom 5 as that weird phone number song from the 70s, you're missing how strange and clever City Boy really were. City Boy were a Birmingham band who mixed art rock brains with pop instincts. They wrote theatrical, wordy songs, but they rapped them in big choruses and radio-friendly melodies. By the time they got to 5.7.0.5 in 1978, they had a secret weapon. Producer Robert John Mutt Lange, the same guy who would later help define the sound of Def Leppard and Shania Twain. 5.7.05 is their most famous moment, a hooky single built around a fragment of a phone number and a desperate plea to reconnect. It's all there. Stacked harmonies, a chorus that explodes, and that slightly theatrical delivery that makes it feel like a scene from a rock opera. The song became a genuine hit in the UK, reaching number 8 on the official singles chart and even cracked the US Billboard Hot 100, peaking at number 27. So why is City Boy overlooked? Part of it is timing. In 1978, punk and new wave were reshaping pop culture. The taste was for raw, simple, and loud. City Boy, with their clever lyrics and polished production, were a little out of step with that mood. They weren't quite prog, not really heavy rock, and too smart and layered to sit comfortably next to throwaway pop on the radio. Now we're going into full cult territory. Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft isn't just a song, it's the center of one of rock's strangest myths. Klaatu were a Canadian band from Toronto, formed in 1973 with a sound that blended progressive rock, psychedelic pop, and space-age studio tricks.
Of interplanetary craft, calling what you think.
Their debut album 347 EST arrived in 1976 with almost no information, no band photos, no names, just the music. One track in particular stood out, this sweeping, slow-building piece called Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft, a sort of cosmic open letter to alien life.
We'd like to make.
Then the rumor hit. In 1977, a journalist at the Providence Journal wrote an article asking, could Klaatu be Beatles? Fans were hungry for any hint of a secret Fab Four reunion, and Klaatu's Beatles-like harmonies, plus their label connection to Capitol,
Occupants of calling of interplanetary.
poured gasoline on the fire. For a little while, people genuinely thought this mysterious band might be the Beatles recording under a fake name. The truth eventually came out. Klaatu were just Klaatu. 3 Canadian musicians, not a hidden Lennon-McCartney comeback. At the same time, the Carpenters covered Calling Occupants in 1977, turning it into a lush orchestral single that went top 40 internationally and became the version most casual listeners remember. Some songs quietly redraw the map for a whole genre. Go All the Way is one of those. The Raspberries were a Cleveland band who launched in 1970 with a very specific recipe, the harmonies and melodies of the Beatles and the Beach Boys. Played with the volume and crunch of early hard rock. Critics later called it power pop, but at the time, it was just a band trying to write big, emotional songs with louder guitars. Go All the Way, released in 1972, was their breakthrough and their peak. Written by singer Eric Carmen, the single shot to number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 sold over 1 million copies and earned them their only gold record. But the song also ran into trouble. Its lyrics, hinting pretty openly at teenage desire, were considered risky at the time. The BBC banned it from airplay, which limited its impact in the UK, even as it climbed the charts in North America. Wikipedia. What sounded edgy in 1972 now feels almost innocent, but the damage to their international profile was done.
September girls.
If you hang around music nerds long enough, you will hear the phrase, without Big Star, there would be no insert favorite indie band here. They're that kind of group. Big Star came out of Memphis in the early 70s, built around Alex Chilton and Chris Bell. They mixed British-influenced melodies with southern melancholy, bright guitars, sad hearts.
Boys got it bad. December boys got it bad.
Their second album, Radio City 1974, contains what many people now call the ultimate power pop song, September Girls. The track itself is deceptively simple, chiming guitars, a lean rhythm section, and lyrics about tangled relationships and seasonal heartbreak.
It's down to me.
It was released as a single in 1974, but it never became a major chart hit. Instead, it slowly turned into one of those songs musicians pass around like a secret handshake. Rolling Stone and other outlets later hailed it as one of the great rock and power pop tracks of all time, and the Bangles even covered it in the 80s. Big Star, as a band, were a commercial disaster. Their albums sold poorly, their label struggled, and they quietly fell apart.
December boys got it bad.
But their influence snowballed over the decades. Members of REM, The Replacements, and many 90s alternative acts have all cited Big Star as a key inspiration, and critics now talk about them as one of the defining cult bands in rock history.
I'm hurting so bad.
From here, we jump into a softer, stranger corner of late 60s pop. The Poppy Family were a Canadian group from Vancouver built around singer Susan Jacks and her then husband Terry Jacks.
My heart and my soul.
Their sound was a dreamy mix of folk, soft pop, and psychedelic touches, tablas, unusual percussion, and arrangements that felt both cozy and unsettling. Which Way You Goin' Billy started life as a mournful story song inspired in part by women watching their partners disappear into the Vietnam War. The single was first released in 1969 and slowly turned into a monster hit. It went to #1 in Canada, topped the charts in Ireland, and climbed all the way to #2 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 and Cashbox charts. It even became a million seller. On paper, that doesn't sound overlooked at all. Those are serious numbers. But listen to how rarely the Poppy Family come up in everyday pop conversation today. When people think of Terry Jacks, they usually jump straight to his solo hit, Seasons in the Sun. Susan Jacks, despite that haunting vocal on Which Way You Goin' Billy, is barely mentioned outside of Canadian music circles. The band's weird, heavy little universe gets compressed into a single, blurry memory. If you ever wanted to hear what it might sound like if the Pet Sounds, Good Vibrations era Beach Boys drifted into a darker, stranger universe, My World Fell Down is that doorway. Sagittarius wasn't a normal band, it was a studio project. Created by producer and songwriter Gary Usher, a guy who had already worked with the Beach Boys and knew exactly how to build those lush California harmonies. In 1967, instead of forming a regular touring group, he pulled together singers and musicians in the studio under the name Sagittarius and cut My World Fell Down for Columbia Records. The song actually started as a British tune written by John Carter and Jeff Stevens and first recorded by the Ivy League. But it was the Sagittarius version that turned it into a cult classic. Usher layered it with symphonic strings, multi-part harmonies, and an eerie, experimental middle section full of strange sound effects and cut-up audio, almost like a little psychedelic dream sequence dropped into the middle of a pop single.
Hey, Pop Lore family. Did you know only 1% of viewers are subscribed? If you love deep dives into pop legends, forgotten gems, and the stories behind the songs that shaped generations, hit that subscribe button right now. And don't forget to turn on LL notifications so you'll be the first to know when we premiere our next video. It's free, it helps Pop Lore grow, and it makes sure you never miss a single countdown or music story. Let's build this community together.
Now imagine taking that same studio obsession and building an entire album around it. That's where the Millennium comes in. The Millennium were a Los Angeles sunshine pop band put together by producer-arranger Kurt Boettcher, a behind-the-scenes genius who had already worked with the Association and other harmony-heavy pop acts.
Sun still burning down.
In 1968, they released their only album, Begin, a record that many critics now call one of the high points of LA studio psychedelia. It's You is the opening track and the lead single, written by Michael Fennelly and Joey Steck. Produced by Butcher and Keith Olsen, it sets the tone for the whole album. Bright, carefully arranged vocals over intricate chords and gentle but driving rhythms on the surface. It sounds like pure sunshine pop, happy, tuneful, friendly. Underneath, the lyrics are more tense and political than you might expect. It's been described as a veiled protest song with lines inspired by government censorship and the paranoia of the late 60s. To close this section of the countdown, we go back to Los Angeles in the late 60s, where every garage seemed to hold a band trying to be the next Beatles. The merry-go-round came closer than most. Formed in 1967 around teenage songwriter E. Mitt Rhodes. The Merry-Go-Round were a tight LA pop group who took clear inspiration from the Beatles, the Byrds, and fellow Baroque pop pioneers, the Left Banke. They released just one album, The Merry-Go-Round, in 1967, full of short, tuneful songs that sounded like instant hits. Live was their debut single and local breakthrough. In Los Angeles, it was a genuine smash on radio. Nationally, it made a more modest dent, peaking around the lower reaches of the Billboard Hot 100 and helping their album scrape into the charts. At number 190, the song itself is pure 1967 pop magic, jangling guitars, a soaring melody, and Rhodes' clear, youthful voice, selling a lyric that's all about seizing the moment. If you were a producer, DJ, or crate digger hunting through used record bins in the 90s and 2000s, you probably dreamed of stumbling on a free design record. For most regular listeners, though, the name still draws blank stares. The Free Design were a sibling vocal group from New York State, members of the Dedrick family who started releasing music in the late 60s. Their debut album, Kites Are Fun, came out in 1967 on the audiophile-focused Project 3 label. The title track, Kites Are Fun, was their one song that flirted with the charts, reaching number 33 on Billboard's Adult Contemporary chart and bubbling just under the main Hot 100. Musically, Kites Are Fun is sunshine pop on the surface, light, breezy, and full of optimism. But the musical writing is surprisingly complex. The group stacks jazz-influenced harmonies, unusual chord changes, and very precise arrangements under lyrics about something as simple as flying kites. It's childlike and sophisticated at the same time, which is part of why producers and musicians fell in love with it decades later.
I wish that you was mine. She flies like a bird. Oh, me.
Some bands get one perfect song and then vanish. Honey Bus is one of those stories, but that one song is so good, it keeps pulling listeners back. Honey Bus were a British pop group formed in London in the late 60s. Their sound leaned toward what we now call Baroque pop. Gentle vocals, acoustic textures, and carefully arranged strings. I Can't Let Maggie Go, written by band member Pete Dello and released as a single in early 1968.
Oh, she flies like a bird in the sky.
Is was the purest expression of that style. On the UK charts, it did very well. The single climbed into the top 10, peaking at number 8 on the official singles chart and staying in the listings for multiple weeks.
You walk there, and people stop.
So became a modest hit in places like New Zealand and Ireland. In other words, in 1968, Honey Bus weren't nobodies, they were a real presence on the radio.
In the sky, she flies like a bird. And
The song itself is delicate but incredibly catchy. A light, almost floating melody carries lyrics about not being able to let go of someone.
oh me, oh my heart, singing homicide.
Maggie, while flutes and strings weave around the vocal. It's sad, sweet, and strangely weightless, the kind of track that feels like it should be constantly rediscovered by new generations. At the very top of this list, we land on a band that, in a fairer world, would be mentioned every time people talk about the Beatles, the Beach Boys, or the Zombies, the Left Banke. Formed in New York City in the mid-60s, the Left Banke were the textbook definition of Baroque pop. They took classic pop songwriting and dressed it in orchestral colors, harpsichord, strings, woodwinds, and arrangements that sounded more like chamber music than garage rock. Their defining song is Walk Away, Renee, released as a single in July 1966, written by keyboardist Michael Brown with Bob Kalili and Tony Sansone, and sung by Steve Martin Caro. Walk Away, Renee is a simple story of unrequited love told with heartbreaking clarity. It's not just the lyrics, it's the way the melody rises and falls, the way the string lines echo the emotion in the vocal. The way the harpsichord gives it a slightly old-world, fragile feel. The song spent 13 weeks on the U.S. charts and reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, a real hit by any standard. Critics and musicians have spent decades calling it one of the purest examples of Baroque pop ever recorded. It has been covered many times, including a notable version by the Four Tops in 1968. Which took it into the soul world, and yet somehow the Left Banke themselves never crossed over into the Rock Hall of Fame tier of classic acts. The journey doesn't end here, pop lovers. Watch this next.